The old philosopher stood in the middle of a crowded marketplace while people argued, shouted, lied, and tried to outsmart one another. Some manipulated through fear. Others manipulated through praise. A few manipulated through guilt and silence. Yet the old man remained calm. No anger touched his face. No insult disturbed his peace. When someone asked him how he stayed so unshaken, he smiled gently and said, "The moment you understand yourself, no one can control you again." That is the power of Stoicism. Most people are not controlled by chains. They are controlled by emotions. They are controlled by the fear of rejection, the desire for approval, and the need to be accepted. Manipulators understand this deeply. They know exactly how to pull emotional strings to gain power over others. But Stoicism teaches something different. It teaches you how to master your mind so completely that nobody can use your emotions against you. If you have ever felt drained by toxic people, pressured by society, controlled by emotional games, or trapped by the opinions of others, this video will change the way you see the world. These Stoic laws are not just ideas. They are weapons for inner freedom. They help you remain calm when others panic, strong when others fold, and wise when others try to deceive you. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and join this growing community of people learning how to master themselves through Stoicism. Every video here is designed to make you mentally stronger, emotionally calmer, and impossible to manipulate. One of the first Stoic laws is learning to control your emotional reactions. Manipulators thrive on emotional chaos. They want you angry because angry people lose clarity. They want you desperate because desperate people become easy to control. They want you emotional because emotional minds stop thinking logically. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. That is why they trained themselves to pause before reacting. Imagine someone insulting you publicly. Most people react immediately. They defend themselves, argue, or explode with emotion. But the Stoic pauses. He understands that reacting emotionally gives power away. Silence becomes strength. Calmness becomes armor. The manipulator expects emotional weakness and becomes confused when they find emotional discipline instead. This does not mean becoming cold or emotionless. Stoicism is not about suppressing emotions. It is about mastering them. You feel anger without letting anger control your actions. You feel pain without letting pain destroy your peace. You feel disappointment without collapsing into despair. This level of self-control makes manipulation nearly impossible. Another Stoic law is refusing to depend on external validation. Many people are manipulated because they desperately want approval. They want everyone to like them. They fear criticism so much that they sacrifice their own values just to avoid rejection. Manipulators see this weakness immediately. The Stoics believed your worth does not come from applause. It does not come from social status, compliments, or popularity. Your worth comes from your character. Once you understand this, you stop becoming a prisoner of other people's opinions. Think about how many people change themselves just to fit in. They pretend to agree when they truly disagree. They remain silent when they should speak. They chase approval from people who do not even respect them. This creates a life built on fear rather than truth. A Stoic chooses authenticity over approval. They understand that people will judge no matter what. Some will misunderstand you. Some will dislike you for reasons you cannot control. The Stoic accepts this reality peacefully. And once you stop fearing rejection, manipulators lose one of their strongest weapons against you. Another powerful Stoic law is understanding the difference between what you can control and what you cannot. This idea sounds simple, but it can completely transform your life. Most suffering comes from trying to control things outside your power. You cannot control other people's opinions. You cannot control betrayal. You cannot control the past. You cannot control every outcome. Manipulators often trap people by creating emotional pressure around things they cannot control. They make you feel guilty for situations beyond your responsibility. They blame you for their emotions. They create confusion and emotional chaos so you feel responsible for fixing everything. But the Stoic remains grounded. They focus only on their own actions, choices, and mindset. They refuse to carry emotional burdens that do not belong to them. This creates extraordinary inner peace. Imagine someone trying to provoke guilt in you because you chose your own boundaries. A Stoic calmly recognizes the manipulation. They understand that protecting their peace is not selfish. They understand they are not responsible for managing every emotion other people feel. Boundaries are another Stoic law that protects you from manipulation. Weak boundaries invite control. Strong boundaries command respect. Many people struggle with this because they fear disappointing others. They say yes when they want to say no. They tolerate disrespect to avoid conflict. They allow toxic behavior because they fear loneliness. The Stoics understood that peace sometimes requires distance. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your energy. Not everyone deserves your trust. Wisdom means recognizing who brings peace into your life and who brings destruction. A strong boundary is not hatred. It is self-respect. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is no. No to manipulation. No to emotional games. No to disrespect. No to people who constantly drain your spirit. The Stoic does not feel guilty for protecting their inner world because they know peace is priceless. Another Stoic principle is learning to observe people carefully before trusting them deeply. Manipulators often reveal themselves slowly. They use charm, emotional pressure, or false kindness to gain influence. The Stoics believed wisdom requires observation. They watched actions more than words. Words can lie. Actions rarely do. Someone may promise loyalty while consistently betraying trust. Someone may claim love while constantly creating pain. Someone may pretend to support you while secretly competing against you. The Stoic notices patterns. They do not ignore red flags because of emotions. This level of awareness protects you from deception. It teaches you to trust slowly and wisely rather than emotionally and blindly. Stoicism also teaches the power of silence. Many people talk too much about their goals, fears, weaknesses, and plans. Manipulators gather this information and use it later. The Stoics understood the value of restraint. Silence creates mystery. Silence creates observation. Silence prevents unnecessary conflict. A wise person does not reveal everything to everyone. They understand that privacy is protection. Not every opinion deserves your response. Not every insult deserves your attention. Not every battle deserves your energy. Sometimes silence is more powerful than the perfect argument. Another Stoic law is detachment from outcomes. Manipulators control people through fear of loss. They make you afraid of losing relationships, opportunities, money, or status. Fear creates emotional dependency. Emotional dependency creates control. But Stoicism teaches that everything external is temporary. Wealth can disappear. Relationships can end. Fame can fade. The Stoic appreciates these things without becoming enslaved by them. This creates incredible freedom. When you are no longer terrified of losing something, people lose the ability to control you through fear. You stop begging for love. You stop chasing validation. You stop tolerating disrespect just to avoid being alone. The Stoic understands that inner peace is more valuable than temporary comfort. One of the deepest Stoic teachings is accepting human nature. Many people become manipulated because they expect everyone to be kind, loyal, honest, and fair. But reality often disappoints them. The Stoics prepared themselves mentally for human imperfections. They understood some people lie. Some betray. Some envy. Some manipulate. Accepting this reality does not make you cynical. It makes you wise. When you stop expecting perfection from people, you stop becoming shocked by human behavior. You become calmer, more aware, and emotionally stronger. You stop taking every betrayal personally. You stop collapsing emotionally every time someone disappoints you. This mindset protects your peace because your emotional stability no longer depends entirely on the behavior of others. Stoicism also teaches the importance of self-discipline. Manipulators target weakness. They look for uncontrolled desires, addictions, insecurities, and emotional instability. A person without discipline becomes easy to influence. The Stoics train themselves daily. They practiced patience, restraint, focus, and moderation. They understood that mastering yourself is the highest form of power. A disciplined person cannot easily be bribed by pleasure or controlled by fear. They think long-term instead of emotionally reacting in the moment. This makes manipulation far more difficult. Imagine someone trying to provoke you into anger while you remain calm. Imagine someone trying to tempt you into abandoning your principles while you remain grounded. Imagine someone trying to emotionally pressure you while you stand firm in your values. That is Stoic strength. Another powerful law is refusing to become emotionally addicted to attention. Many people become controlled because they crave constant communication, praise, affection, or recognition. Manipulators use this need to gain power. The Stoic learns to enjoy solitude. They become comfortable alone. They do not need constant validation to feel valuable. This independence creates emotional freedom. When you are comfortable by yourself, you stop tolerating unhealthy relationships out of fear of loneliness. You stop begging for attention from people who barely respect you. You stop allowing emotional games to control your mood. Solitude becomes strength instead of punishment. Stoicism also teaches you to think before trusting emotions. Feelings are powerful, but feelings are not always truthful. Anger can exaggerate problems. Fear can create illusions. Desire can blind judgment. Manipulators often create emotional confusion intentionally. They trigger fear, guilt, excitement, or insecurity because emotional people become easier to influence. The Stoic slows down and examines reality carefully. They ask themselves important questions. Is this true? Is this useful? Am I reacting emotionally or rationally? This habit creates clarity. Clarity destroys manipulation. Another Stoic law is learning not to chase revenge. Manipulators often expect emotional reactions. They expect rage, drama, and chaos. But the Stoic understands that revenge usually creates deeper suffering. True power is moving forward peacefully. The Stoic does not waste years obsessing over betrayal. They learn the lesson, protect themselves, and continue growing stronger. They refuse to let toxic people occupy permanent space in their mind. Nothing frustrates manipulators more than someone who refuses to become consumed by hatred. Stoicism also teaches resilience during hardship. Difficult experiences often reveal who people truly are. Pain can either break you or sharpen you. The Stoics believe suffering could become a teacher. Every betrayal teaches discernment. Every disappointment teaches emotional strength. Every hardship teaches resilience. Manipulators often search for emotionally weak people because weakness is easier to control. But a person who has survived pain, learned from it, and remained calm becomes incredibly difficult to manipulate. Strength built through struggle cannot easily be shaken. Another Stoic law is protecting your attention. Your attention is one of the most valuable things you possess. Manipulators constantly seek control over it. They create drama, conflict, distractions, and emotional noise. The Stoic guards their focus carefully. They do not waste energy on gossip, pointless arguments, or unnecessary negativity. They understand that where attention goes, energy follows. A distracted mind becomes weak. A focused mind becomes powerful. This is why Stoics value simplicity. Simplicity creates clarity. Clarity creates peace. Peace creates strength. One of the most dangerous forms of manipulation is guilt manipulation. Some people constantly make you feel responsible for their happiness, emotions, or problems. They use guilt to control your decisions. The Stoic recognizes this immediately. Compassion does not mean self-destruction. Helping others should not require abandoning yourself completely. You can care about people without sacrificing your mental peace. You can love others without allowing them to control your life. This balance is essential. Another Stoic principle is understanding that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Some people misuse vulnerability. They collect personal information only to weaponize it later. The Stoics believe trust should be earned gradually through consistent behavior. They understood wisdom requires caution. This does not mean becoming paranoid. It means becoming aware. A wise person opens their heart carefully. They observe character before offering complete trust. Stoicism also teaches acceptance of loneliness during growth. Sometimes becoming stronger means losing certain people. Some relationships survive only because you remain weak, dependent, or easily controlled. The moment you develop boundaries, self-respect, and emotional independence, some people become uncomfortable. They preferred the version of you they could manipulate. Do not fear this transformation. Losing toxic connections often creates space for healthier relationships. The Stoics understood that growth sometimes requires walking alone temporarily. But temporary loneliness is far better than permanent manipulation. Another Stoic law is speaking less and listening more. Manipulators often expose themselves through conversation. If you stay calm and observant, you notice inconsistencies, selfish motives, and hidden intentions. Most people reveal who they are eventually. The Stoic listens carefully without rushing emotionally. This patience protects them from deception. Wisdom grows in silence. Another powerful lesson from Stoicism is refusing to become emotionally reactive to criticism. Manipulators often use criticism to weaken confidence and gain control. They want emotional reactions because emotional reactions create vulnerability. But the Stoic examines criticism calmly. If the criticism is true, they improve themselves. If it is false, they ignore it peacefully. This emotional stability creates unshakable confidence. When your self-worth comes from inner character rather than public opinion, insults lose their power. Stoicism also teaches gratitude. A grateful mind becomes harder to manipulate through envy or greed. Many people are controlled because they constantly compare themselves to others. They feel incomplete. They chase more validation, more status, more attention. Manipulators exploit this insecurity. But the Stoic appreciates what they already have. Gratitude creates emotional stability. It reduces desperation. And desperation is often the doorway to manipulation. Contentment is power. One of the final Stoic laws is remembering mortality. The Stoics frequently reflected on the shortness of life. Not to become fearful, but to become focused. Life is too short to waste on toxic people, emotional games, and constant manipulation. Every day matters. Every moment of peace matters. Every decision shapes your future. When you remember life is temporary, you stop tolerating nonsense. You stop chasing approval from people who do not truly care about you. You stop sacrificing your peace for temporary acceptance. You begin living intentionally. And that changes everything. The truth is this. Nobody can manipulate someone who has mastered themselves. Nobody can control a person who remains calm under pressure, detached from approval, disciplined in emotions, and grounded in truth. That is why Stoicism remains powerful even today. It teaches freedom from emotional slavery. It teaches peace in chaos. It teaches strength without cruelty. And most importantly, it teaches you how to become the kind of person who cannot easily be controlled by the world around them. If this video spoke to you, subscribe to the channel for more powerful Stoic teachings that will strengthen your mind, sharpen your discipline, and transform your life. Join this growing community of people learning how to stay calm in a chaotic world and become mentally unshakable through Stoicism. Your journey toward inner freedom starts now. There is a quiet kind of power that most people never notice. It does not shout. It does not demand attention. It does not try to prove itself constantly. Yet when this power enters a room, manipulators become uncomfortable because they can no longer control the person standing before them. The Stoics called this inner authority. It is the ability to remain grounded even when the world around you becomes unstable. Most people are controlled because they are constantly reacting. One insult ruins their entire day. One rejection destroys their confidence. One negative opinion changes the way they see themselves. Their emotions move like leaves in the wind, and because of this, other people can easily influence them. But the Stoic becomes like a mountain. Storms may strike the mountain. Winds may crash against it. Rain may fall endlessly upon it. Yet the mountain remains standing. This is the mindset Stoicism tries to build within you. A mind that remains steady regardless of external chaos. One of the greatest signs that someone can manipulate you is when they can control your mood. Think about that carefully. If someone can make you angry whenever they want, they control part of your mind. If someone can destroy your peace with a few words, they hold emotional power over you. The Stoics refused to give people this kind of control. They understood that protecting inner peace was one of the highest forms of wisdom. This is why they practiced emotional awareness daily. They constantly examined their reactions. They trained themselves to respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Imagine how powerful your life becomes when people can no longer provoke you easily. Arguments lose their grip on you. Insults lose their poison. Manipulation loses its effectiveness. You begin seeing situations clearly instead of emotionally. And clarity is dangerous to manipulators. Another Stoic law is refusing to explain yourself endlessly. Many people become trapped because they constantly seek permission to live their own lives. They explain every decision, defend every boundary, and justify every personal choice. Manipulators love this because it places you in a weak position. The more desperate you are to be understood, the easier it becomes for others to pressure you emotionally. The Stoic understands something important. Not everyone will understand your decisions, and that is perfectly fine. You do not need universal approval to live truthfully. Sometimes silence is stronger than endless explanations. Sometimes walking away peacefully is wiser than trying to convince people who have already chosen misunderstanding. A Stoic conserves energy carefully. They know emotional exhaustion weakens judgment. This is why they avoid unnecessary drama. They avoid gossip, pointless conflict, and emotionally chaotic environments whenever possible. Peace becomes a priority. Many people unknowingly become addicted to emotional chaos because chaos feels familiar. They constantly surround themselves with toxic relationships, endless arguments, and stressful situations. Then they wonder why they feel mentally drained all the time. The Stoics understood that your environment shapes your mind. If you constantly surround yourself with negativity, manipulation, and emotional instability, your inner peace slowly erodes. Protecting your mental environment is not weakness. It is wisdom. Another Stoic law that destroys manipulation is patience. Manipulators often rely on urgency. They pressure you into quick emotional decisions because rushed emotions create poor judgment. They say things like, "You must decide right now. If you really cared, you would do this immediately. You are overthinking." The Stoic recognizes these tactics. Instead of rushing emotionally, they slow down. They think carefully. They examine motives. They allow time to reveal truth. Patience protects wisdom. Many life disasters happen because people react too quickly under emotional pressure. The Stoic refuses to surrender clarity for temporary emotional comfort. This alone can save you from countless regrets. Another powerful Stoic lesson is understanding that people often project their inner problems onto others. A manipulative person may accuse you of being selfish simply because you developed healthy boundaries. A dishonest person may constantly accuse others of lying. An insecure person may try to destroy your confidence because your strength reminds them of their weakness. The Stoics observed human behavior carefully. They understood that many attacks are reflections of the attacker rather than the victim. This realization creates emotional freedom. You stop internalizing every insult. You stop carrying every accusation in your heart. You stop allowing wounded people to define your identity. Instead, you remain centered in truth. One of the most difficult Stoic laws is learning not to rescue everyone. Many good-hearted people become manipulated because they constantly try to save others from the consequences of their own behavior. They sacrifice their peace to fix people who refuse to change. They tolerate disrespect because they hope love will transform toxic behavior. They carry emotional burdens that were never theirs to carry. The Stoics believed compassion must be balanced with wisdom. You can support people without destroying yourself. You can care deeply without becoming emotionally enslaved. This balance is powerful. Because manipulators often target kind people who lack boundaries. They know empathetic people feel guilty easily. They know compassionate people often ignore red flags. The Stoic learns to combine kindness with strength. This creates emotional balance that manipulators cannot easily exploit. Another Stoic principle is becoming comfortable with discomfort. Many people become controlled because they fear discomfort too much. They fear loneliness, rejection, criticism, uncertainty, and failure. Manipulators use these fears constantly. But Stoicism trains you to endure discomfort calmly. The Stoics voluntarily practiced hardship at times. They understood that comfort addiction creates weakness. If your happiness depends entirely on comfort, you become easy to control. But when you learn that you can survive difficult emotions, difficult seasons, and difficult experiences, fear loses its grip on you. You become stronger. You stop settling for unhealthy relationships simply because you fear being alone. You stop remaining silent simply because you fear criticism. You stop betraying yourself simply because you fear discomfort. This is freedom. Another Stoic law is understanding that emotional attachment can cloud judgment. When people become overly attached to someone's approval, affection, or presence, they often ignore reality. They excuse disrespect. They ignore manipulation. They tolerate emotional abuse. Why? Because attachment blinds them. The Stoics taught the importance of seeing people clearly rather than emotionally idealizing them. This does not mean becoming cold-hearted. It means remaining awake. Real love should not require constant suffering. Real friendship should not destroy your peace. Real loyalty should not demand self-betrayal. A Stoic observes whether relationships bring growth or destruction. Wisdom requires honesty. Another powerful Stoic habit is daily self-reflection. The Stoics constantly examined themselves. They asked difficult questions. Did I react wisely today? Did anger control me? Did fear influence my decisions? Did I remain true to my values? This habit creates self-awareness, and self-awareness makes manipulation far less effective. Because manipulators succeed most easily when people lack awareness of their own weaknesses. The more you understand yourself, the harder it becomes for others to control you. You recognize your emotional triggers. You recognize your insecurities. You recognize the areas where you need growth. And once awareness enters the mind, manipulation begins losing power. Another Stoic law is refusing to seek revenge through success. Some people become obsessed with proving others wrong. Every achievement becomes fueled by bitterness. Every goal becomes connected to emotional validation. The Stoics warned against this mindset because it still gives power to other people. True freedom is living according to your values regardless of who doubted you. Success feels different when it comes from peace rather than revenge. The Stoic does not build their life around proving something to toxic people. They focus on personal excellence, inner peace, and meaningful growth. That creates lasting fulfillment. Another lesson Stoicism teaches is that emotional independence does not mean isolation. Some people misunderstand Stoicism and believe it requires shutting everyone out emotionally. But Stoicism is not about becoming emotionally numb. It is about becoming emotionally stable. You can love deeply without losing yourself. You can care about people without surrendering your peace. You can build strong relationships while maintaining healthy boundaries. This balance is rare in today's world. Many people either become emotionally dependent or emotionally detached. The Stoic seeks the middle path. Strong but compassionate. Calm but caring. Independent but connected. This emotional balance makes manipulation difficult because your happiness no longer depends entirely on another person's behavior. Another Stoic principle is understanding the temporary nature of emotions. Feelings come and go like waves. Anger fades. Sadness changes. Fear shifts. Desire weakens. Manipulators often rely on temporary emotions to influence permanent decisions. The Stoic waits. They know intense emotions eventually settle. And once emotions settle, truth becomes easier to see. This simple habit can protect you from countless mistakes. Never make permanent decisions based on temporary emotional storms. Another Stoic law is learning the strength of walking away. Many people stay in toxic environments far too long because they fear change. They fear starting over. They fear uncertainty. But sometimes walking away is the most powerful decision you can make. Walking away from manipulation. Walking away from constant disrespect. Walking away from emotional chaos. Walking away from people who repeatedly drain your spirit. The Stoics believed peace of mind was priceless. No amount of temporary comfort is worth permanent inner suffering. Sometimes freedom begins the moment you stop tolerating what destroys your peace. And perhaps the deepest Stoic truth of all is this: nobody can truly manipulate a person who no longer fears losing external things. If you do not fear losing approval, manipulation weakens. If you do not fear loneliness, emotional control weakens. If you do not fear criticism, intimidation weakens. If you do not fear temporary discomfort, pressure weakens. This is why Stoicism focuses so deeply on inner strength. Because the stronger your inner world becomes, the less dependent you become on external validation, emotional comfort, or social approval. And that is where real freedom begins. Subscribe to the channel for more Stoic wisdom that will help you master your emotions, strengthen your mindset, and become mentally unshakable in a world filled with distraction and manipulation. Your strongest self is waiting to be built. There comes a moment in life when you realize that not everyone who smiles at you wants the best for you. Some people study your weaknesses quietly. Some observe your emotions carefully. Some learn your fears, insecurities, and desires so they can influence your decisions later. This truth can feel uncomfortable at first, but the Stoics believed wisdom begins the moment you stop seeing the world through illusions. A wise person does not become paranoid. A wise person becomes aware. Awareness changes everything. Most manipulation succeeds because people are asleep emotionally. They move through life reacting automatically without examining the motives behind what others say or do. They trust too quickly. They ignore intuition. They silence inner warnings because they fear appearing rude or difficult. But Stoicism teaches you to respect your inner clarity. If something feels wrong repeatedly, pay attention. If someone constantly drains your energy, pay attention. If a relationship always leaves you anxious, confused, or emotionally exhausted, pay attention. The Stoics believed peace is a sign of alignment, while constant emotional chaos is often a warning signal. One of the most dangerous traps in life is emotional dependency. When your happiness depends entirely on another person, you hand them enormous power over your emotional state. Your mood rises and falls based on their attention, approval, or behavior. This creates vulnerability that manipulators can easily exploit. The Stoics trained themselves to find stability within. They appreciated relationships, but they never allowed their identity to depend completely on external attachment. This creates emotional freedom. You stop chasing people who constantly pull away. You stop begging for attention from people who barely value your presence. You stop sacrificing your dignity just to avoid temporary loneliness. And suddenly your relationships become healthier because they are built on choice rather than desperation. Another Stoic law is learning not to overreact to temporary emotions. A manipulator often creates emotional intensity to cloud your judgment. They may provoke jealousy, fear, anger, or urgency because intense emotions weaken logical thinking. The Stoic pauses before reacting. That pause is powerful. In that small moment between emotion and action, wisdom has a chance to enter. Most regrets in life are born from impulsive emotional reactions. Angry words destroy relationships. Fearful decisions destroy opportunities. Desperate choices destroy self-respect. The Stoics understood that calm thinking protects life from unnecessary suffering. This is why they practice stillness. Stillness sharpens perception. Another Stoic principle is refusing to become controlled by praise. Most people understand the danger of criticism, but very few understand the danger of excessive praise. Manipulators often flatter people to gain influence over them. They tell you exactly what you want to hear. They make you feel uniquely special. They create emotional attachment through admiration. The Stoics warned against becoming addicted to compliments because addiction to praise creates weakness. If compliments control your confidence, manipulation becomes easier. The Stoic accepts praise calmly without becoming dependent on it. Their confidence comes from self-knowledge rather than external admiration. This creates stability. Another powerful Stoic habit is separating facts from emotional stories. Many people suffer not because of reality itself, but because of the fearful stories they create in their minds. A delayed message becomes rejection. A disagreement becomes betrayal. A mistake becomes personal failure. Manipulators often use emotional exaggeration to create confusion and pressure. But the Stoic examines situations rationally. What are the facts? What assumptions am I making? Am I reacting to reality or imagination? This level of mental discipline creates extraordinary emotional clarity. And clarity protects peace. Another Stoic law is understanding that some people only value you when they can control you. This realization can be painful, but it is important. Some relationships survive only because you constantly sacrifice your needs, suppress your voice, and tolerate disrespect. The moment you develop boundaries, some people become angry. Not because you became cruel, but because you became harder to manipulate. The Stoics understood that growth changes relationships. Some people celebrate your strength. Others resent it because your strength removes their influence over you. Do not fear losing people who only loved your weakness. Real relationships survive honesty and boundaries. Another Stoic principle is becoming careful with emotional oversharing. In moments of loneliness or emotional vulnerability, many people reveal too much too quickly. Manipulators collect this information quietly and use it later. The Stoics valued restraint. Not secrecy born from fear, but wisdom born from awareness. You do not need to reveal every wound to everyone you meet. Trust should grow slowly through consistent actions over time. A wise person protects their inner world carefully because they understand emotional vulnerability placed in the wrong hands can become a weapon against them. Another Stoic law is refusing to let anger make decisions for you. Manipulators often try to provoke emotional explosions because once anger takes control, wisdom disappears. An angry mind becomes reckless. The Stoics viewed anger as temporary madness. They understood that people often destroy years of peace in moments of uncontrolled emotion. This is why they trained themselves to remain calm even during provocation. Imagine the strength required to stay composed while others lose control around you. That calmness is not weakness. It is mastery. The Stoic understands that emotional discipline is one of the highest forms of power a human being can possess. Another Stoic lesson is learning to enjoy your own company. Many people remain trapped in toxic situations simply because they fear solitude. They tolerate manipulation because being alone feels frightening. But the Stoics transformed solitude into strength. Solitude allows reflection. Solitude restores clarity. Solitude strengthens independence. A person who enjoys their own company becomes difficult to control because they no longer tolerate unhealthy relationships merely to escape loneliness. This changes the entire quality of your life. You begin choosing relationships carefully rather than desperately. Another Stoic principle is accepting that you cannot save everyone. Some people are committed to chaos. Some repeat destructive patterns endlessly. Some refuse accountability regardless of how much support they receive. Trying to rescue people who refuse responsibility can slowly destroy your own peace. The Stoics believed wisdom includes recognizing where your responsibility ends. You can offer guidance. You can offer kindness. You can offer support. But you cannot force people to change. Understanding this protects your emotional energy. Another Stoic law is remaining humble during success. Manipulation does not only happen during weakness. Sometimes success creates vulnerability too. Pride blinds people. Ego weakens awareness. Excessive confidence creates carelessness. The Stoics remained grounded even during achievement. They understood that external success is temporary. Character matters more than status. Humility keeps perception clear. And clear perception protects against deception. Another powerful Stoic teaching is learning not to internalize every negative opinion. Some people criticize because they are wounded. Some criticize because they envy growth they have not achieved themselves. Some criticize simply because negativity has become part of their identity. The Stoic listens carefully but not emotionally. If criticism contains truth, they learn from it. If it contains bitterness without truth, they release it peacefully. This mindset protects emotional stability. You stop carrying unnecessary emotional weight. You stop allowing strangers to define your worth. You become anchored within yourself. Another Stoic law is protecting your time. Manipulators often waste your energy through unnecessary drama, constant crises, emotional games, and endless conflict. The Stoics viewed time as life itself. Once time is wasted, it never returns. This realization changes priorities. You become more selective about who receives your energy. You stop investing deeply in relationships that repeatedly destroy your peace. You stop arguing with people committed to misunderstanding. You stop chasing validation from emotionally unavailable individuals. And your life becomes lighter. Another Stoic principle is recognizing the power of emotional detachment. Detachment does not mean indifference. It means maintaining inner stability regardless of external situations. The Stoic can love deeply while still remaining grounded. They can experience disappointment without collapsing emotionally. They can face loss without losing themselves entirely. This emotional balance creates resilience that manipulation cannot easily penetrate. Because manipulators rely on emotional extremes, the Stoic remains centered. Another Stoic lesson is understanding that silence reveals truth. Many people talk endlessly because silence makes them uncomfortable. But silence often exposes intentions more clearly than words. When you stop interrupting constantly, people reveal themselves naturally. Patterns emerge. Contradictions appear. Truth surfaces slowly. The Stoics valued observation because wise observation protects against deception. A calm observer sees what emotional people often miss. Another Stoic law is refusing to become consumed by resentment. Carrying bitterness gives toxic people permanent space inside your mind. The Stoic refuses this burden. They learn. They protect themselves. They move forward. Forgiveness in Stoicism is not weakness. It is freedom from emotional imprisonment. You stop reliving old betrayals endlessly. You stop allowing past pain to poison present peace. You reclaim your mental energy. And that is powerful. Another Stoic principle is understanding that discipline creates freedom. Most people think freedom means doing whatever they feel like doing. The Stoics believed the opposite. Without discipline, emotions control you. Without discipline, desires control you. Without discipline, distractions control you. True freedom begins when you can control yourself. A disciplined mind resists manipulation because it is not driven entirely by impulses. It thinks carefully. It acts intentionally. It remains steady under pressure. And perhaps this is the ultimate Stoic lesson. The greatest victory is not controlling others. The greatest victory is controlling yourself. Because once you master your thoughts, emotions, reactions, and desires, the world loses much of its power over you. You stop living reactively. You stop becoming emotionally predictable. You stop allowing fear, guilt, approval, or pressure to control your decisions. And in that moment, something extraordinary happens. You become free. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful Stoic teachings that will strengthen your mind, deepen your discipline, and help you become mentally untouchable in a world filled with distractions and manipulation. Your path toward inner mastery has only just begun. One of the quietest forms of manipulation is the manipulation of your attention. Not your money. Not your possessions. Your attention. Because whatever controls your attention slowly begins to control your life. The Stoics understood this long before the modern world became filled with endless distractions. They knew the mind becomes shaped by whatever it constantly consumes. If your attention is trapped in drama, comparison, negativity, and emotional chaos, your inner world eventually reflects that confusion. This is why a Stoic guards the mind carefully. Not every conversation deserves your energy. Not every argument deserves your response. Not every opinion deserves space in your thoughts. A manipulator wants access to your focus because focus is power. Once they control what you think about constantly, they begin influencing how you feel, how you react, and eventually how you live. But the Stoic reclaims control of the mind. They decide what deserves attention and what deserves silence. That level of discipline changes everything. Another Stoic law is learning to remain calm when misunderstood. Many people become emotionally controlled because they cannot tolerate being misunderstood. They exhaust themselves trying to explain every decision to people who have already chosen judgment. The Stoics accepted something difficult but liberating. Not everyone will understand your path. Some people will misinterpret your silence as weakness. Some will mistake your boundaries for arrogance. Some will resent your growth because it reminds them of their own lack of discipline. And that is fine. A Stoic does not abandon truth simply to maintain approval. They remain steady even when misunderstood. This emotional independence is rare. Most people betray themselves the moment social pressure appears. They shrink their voice, hide their values, and silence their instincts just to fit into environments that destroy their peace. But Stoicism teaches courage. The courage to stand alone when necessary. The courage to protect your peace even when others dislike it. The courage to choose integrity over popularity. Another Stoic principle is learning not to romanticize suffering. Some people become trapped in toxic situations because they confuse pain with loyalty. They believe enduring endless emotional damage proves love, strength, or commitment. The Stoics rejected this mindset. Wisdom is not found in unnecessary suffering. A healthy life requires balance. If a relationship constantly destroys your peace, damages your confidence, and drains your spirit, remaining there endlessly is not noble. Sometimes leaving is wisdom. Sometimes distance is healing. Sometimes peace requires separation. The Stoics believed your inner world should not be sacrificed carelessly for relationships built on manipulation and emotional chaos. Another Stoic law is becoming comfortable with saying less. Many people reveal too much because silence makes them anxious. They constantly explain, defend, overshare, and seek reassurance. But a Stoic understands the power of restraint. The less emotionally reactive you become, the harder it is for others to study your weaknesses. This does not mean becoming emotionally unavailable. It means becoming emotionally disciplined. A wise person knows when to speak and when silence protects peace. Another powerful Stoic habit is refusing to compare your life constantly to others. Comparison creates insecurity, and insecurity creates vulnerability to manipulation. When you constantly feel behind, unworthy, or incomplete, you become easier to influence. People can tempt you with status, attention, approval, or false promises because internally you already feel lacking. But the Stoics believed peace begins the moment you stop measuring your worth through external comparison. Someone will always have more money. Someone will always receive more attention. Someone will always appear more successful. If your peace depends on outperforming everyone else, peace will never arrive. The Stoic focuses on personal growth rather than endless comparison. This creates emotional stability. And emotional stability weakens manipulation. Another Stoic principle is learning to recognize emotional bait. Manipulators often test emotional reactions deliberately. They provoke jealousy, insecurity, guilt, or anger just to see how much control they have over your emotions. The Stoic notices this immediately. Instead of reacting impulsively, they remain calm and observant. Why? Because emotional reactions reveal vulnerability. The Stoic protects emotional balance carefully. Calmness becomes protection. Stillness becomes intelligence. Patience becomes power. Another Stoic law is refusing to become addicted to being needed. Many people secretly build their identity around rescuing others. They feel valuable only when fixing problems, carrying burdens, or sacrificing themselves endlessly. Manipulators often exploit this tendency. They create constant crises. They demand endless emotional labor. They make you feel guilty whenever you prioritize yourself. The Stoic understands something important. Your worth does not depend on how much suffering you endure for others. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to step away from emotional exhaustion. This realization changes lives. Another Stoic principle is accepting uncertainty calmly. Manipulators often create fear around uncertainty. They pressure people into unhealthy decisions because uncertainty feels uncomfortable. But Stoicism teaches that uncertainty is part of life itself. No one controls the future completely. No one avoids difficulty forever. No one escapes change. The Stoic stops resisting this truth. Instead of panicking during uncertainty, they adapt calmly. This adaptability creates resilience. And resilient people become difficult to manipulate because fear loses much of its control over them. Another Stoic law is learning to value character over charm. Manipulators are often charming in the beginning. They know how to say the right things. They know how to create emotional excitement quickly. But the Stoics looked beyond appearances. They observed consistency. They observed actions during hardship. They observed integrity when no reward existed. Character reveals itself slowly. This is why wisdom requires patience. Fast emotional attachment often blinds judgment. The Stoic allows time to reveal truth naturally. Another Stoic principle is refusing to let temporary emotions define permanent identity. A bad moment does not make you weak. A failure does not make you worthless. A betrayal does not make you unlovable. Manipulators often attack identity directly. They want you to internalize shame because shame weakens resistance. But the Stoic separates events from identity. Failure becomes a lesson. Pain becomes growth. Criticism becomes information rather than destruction. This mindset creates emotional durability. Another Stoic law is understanding the importance of inner dialogue. The way you speak to yourself shapes your entire emotional world. If your mind constantly repeats fear, insecurity, and self-hatred, manipulation becomes easier because weakness already exists internally. The Stoics practiced conscious thinking. They challenged destructive thoughts. They questioned irrational fears. They replaced emotional chaos with rational clarity. This mental discipline creates inner stability that external manipulation struggles to break. Another Stoic principle is learning not to chase closure endlessly. Many people remain emotionally trapped because they desperately seek explanations from people who hurt them. Why did they betray me? Why did they lie? Why did they change? The Stoics understood that not every question receives a satisfying answer. Sometimes closure comes from acceptance rather than explanation. You stop chasing answers from people committed to confusion. You stop reopening wounds searching for clarity from those who created chaos. You choose peace instead. And peace becomes your closure. Another Stoic law is recognizing the danger of emotional extremes. Extreme attachment creates suffering. Extreme anger destroys wisdom. Extreme fear weakens judgment. The Stoics sought emotional balance. Not emotional numbness. Balance. This balance allows you to experience life deeply without becoming emotionally controlled by every passing feeling. It creates calm strength. And calm strength intimidates manipulators because emotional chaos no longer controls your actions. Another Stoic principle is remembering that self-respect must come before approval. Many people abandon their values simply to maintain relationships or avoid rejection. But every time you betray yourself for acceptance, inner peace weakens. The Stoics believed integrity creates freedom. A person who respects themselves deeply becomes difficult to manipulate because they refuse to trade dignity for temporary validation. This changes your entire presence. You stop begging. You stop chasing. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into unhealthy environments. You stand firmly in who you are. And people feel that strength immediately. Another Stoic law is understanding that emotional maturity means taking responsibility for your reactions. Manipulators may provoke emotions, but the Stoic still accepts responsibility for how they respond. This mindset is powerful because it removes victim mentality. You stop saying, "They made me lose control. They ruined my peace. They destroyed my happiness." Instead, you reclaim ownership of your inner world. And once you reclaim ownership, manipulation begins losing power. Because your emotional state no longer depends entirely on external people or situations. Another Stoic principle is choosing long-term peace over short-term pleasure. Many manipulative situations begin with temporary excitement. Attention feels good. Validation feels good. Emotional intensity feels exciting. But the Stoics always examined long-term consequences. Will this relationship strengthen my peace or destroy it? Will this decision align with my values or weaken them? Will this environment improve my character or corrupt it? This long-term thinking protects wisdom. And wisdom protects freedom. At the center of Stoicism is one simple but life-changing truth. You cannot control the world. But you can control yourself. And once you master yourself, the world becomes far less frightening. Because nobody can easily manipulate a person who has learned how to remain calm, disciplined, self-aware, and emotionally free. Subscribe to the channel for more deep Stoic teachings that will help you build inner peace, emotional strength, and unshakable confidence in a chaotic world. Your strongest self is being built one lesson at a time.